I am the famous American. And I have a question I'm trying to sort out myself. I'm looking at my notes here. I asked the question, is the United States using patriotism to take advantage of American soldiers? And here's why this came to mind. This week, my wife and I watched all 5 parts of the Netflix documentary called Turning Point, which is about 9/11. And they show a lot of footage going back the last 20 years. And I remember one of the most memorable scenes for me. So there's a soldier out in the desert in Afghanistan, I believe. And he turns to the camera and says, I don't know what I'm here for. I don't know what the strategy is. I don't know who I'm shooting at. I don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. He said, all I know is I saw those towers fall on 9/11 and thought, I need to serve my country. And 4 days after I graduated high school, I joined the military, and now I'm here. So a lot of people were in that situation. But I wonder, how long can we sustain that mindset? Can we still get people to join the military based on serving their country, being patriotic? You know, we saw this after World War II, and it made sense, right? We really felt like we were part of helping it. But since then, especially Vietnam, that was obviously, that didn't go well. But it's almost like we've kind of copied and pasted that and made it even bigger, and that has been, Afghanistan this whole time. That's what we've done, the same exact thing. It makes me think of Louis C.K., the comedian. In one of his specials, he talks about how mannerly soldiers are on planes. And he makes a comment on there, Louis C.K. said how much he respects these young men who are going overseas to fight for their country. And then he says, at least that's what they think that they're doing. And so I'm sorting this out. Is that what's going on? Are we ultimately exploiting young men and women to serve in the military? I would think personally, at some point we're going to run out of people who are willing to risk their lives and their health and their mobility to serve the country. But see, that's the thing. I think we conflate what is serving the country versus the United States government has an agenda, and it's a political one, and don't question it. Just know that as long as you're serving in the military, then you're serving our country. Don't worry about it. Just get out there and fight. Because for me, I question things. But I guess I'm confused that there's not more people questioning this. That it doesn't have to be one or the other. That no matter what the United States does, it's a righteous war. It's the moral decision. It's the right thing to do, that we should be over there, that we should be involved in doing that. And that, yes, there's moral ambiguity when it comes to war and taking other people's lives. But the Twin Towers falling was perceived as an attack on American soil. But for the next 20 years, when we look at all that happened, and I look at those soldiers being interviewed, and I see them crying, and I see them breaking down, it makes me feel like they were exploited. So my wife and I, and for the past couple of years, we've been contributing money to the Wounded Warrior Project. So that's helping soldiers who came back and were maimed or lost a leg, etc. And it's to help them. And that's part of why I do it. But I have compassion for them. I think, for me, it's not so much they served our country, they deserve this. It's more like I feel bad that they were led to believe that they were somehow helping, when what if they were just involved in a political ploy? Now, I would advise you to watch Turning Point on Netflix, spend 5 hours and watch it and see that perspective. I feel it was very well done. I feel it was politically neutral. They're not here to bash either side or any of the presidents. I mean, basically all 4 presidents involved in it. There were things that they did right, and there were things that they didn't do right, and they couldn't have known better, or they could have known better, whatever it is. But ultimately, it's a big mess. At what point will we learn from that? We didn't learn from Vietnam, apparently. We didn't learn from that. Maybe we felt so good about Korea that we at least kept the whole country from going communist, and we had a little bit of a win there. So let's try Vietnam, didn't work. Okay, well, enough time has passed. Let's try it again in Afghanistan. Let's try it again in Iraq. Let's try this in the Middle East. Let's fight the terrorists. That confuses me, though. It confuses me that, is it that powerful of a concept that people are fighting for their country? That they're not willing to question the government? That they're not willing to question that? I mean, it's interesting because I've actually heard that they're having to turn people away from the military because people are not physically fit enough to be able to serve, and they have to have them come back later after they become more fit. So apparently there's not that much of a shortage of military soldiers, but only I see a disconnect in communication. And that's something the documentary talked about, the disconnect even between the FBI and the CIA. Had they been communicating, we may have been able to better predict and prevent the 9/11 attacks. But maybe it's just me that thinks it feels like we're exploiting people for a political cause that people don't really understand. And I know that war is confusing, but you go back to World War II, it was pretty straightforward. And since then it hasn't been. It's been very confusing. And I don't think it's just me that feels this way, but I don't think these are popular opinions, and I don't think people are talking about this in real life. But here we have this documentary that is very popular now. People are really fascinated by it. Is this a conversation we can have, or should I delete this video? I don't know. But I'm wanting to have an honest conversation about it. If we were to ask, as I wrote it down in my notes, is the United States using the concept of patriotism to take advantage of American soldiers? Closing thought, here's what I think of. Back, on the show Looney Tunes, like with Bugs Bunny and all that, this episode was probably filmed in or created in the 1960s, 50s, something like that. There's an episode with Speedy Gonzalez, which I know he's politically incorrect and got canceled by now, I'm sure. But the whole concept was, I guess it was in Mexico, they had this president who was a mouse. And he kept sending a very secret message across the border to the next town or the next village or whatever it is. And every time he'd send a mouse with the message, the mouse would get killed by the cat. There was a cat on the border, and the cat would kill the mouse. And all these mice were dying in that little Mexican town. And then finally Speedy Gonzalez comes around to the rescue. And Speedy Gonzalez is quick enough to make it across and not get attacked by the cat. And when he delivers the message, he gives it to the other political figure there in the next town. And he reads it, and what does it say? Happy birthday! So all of these other mice lost their lives. They were just pawns, disposable heroes, as Metallica says, all for happy birthday. The message was not even worth any of those lives being lost. I kind of feel like that's an allegory for war. Now that was made decades ago. But it's like we're not learning from our past, are we? I'm not claiming to have the answers. I'm claiming to have questions. And if I'm not the only one, maybe there's a reason for it. Is this a conversation we can have? Can you enlighten me? Can you relate to me? And if not, I'll delete the video if it's not worth talking about. But I'm sorting this out. I'm actually kind of asking for some insight and help on this. Your comments belong right here.